Welcome to our Restoring America channel, where we will show you a common person's approach to do-it-yourself repairs.
We are replacing a drive pawl on a 20-year-old Craftsman 6.5 horsepower rear-wheel drive lawnmower. The lawnmower runs but has power to only one wheel. I have already looked at the wheel gears and V-drive belt. The transmission also applies power to both gears on each side. Using a 14mm socket on my ratchet wrench and another on my small breaker bar, I loosened the nuts on each wheel. I used rubber automotive wheel chocks to support the rear of the lawnmower while I removed the wheels. The rear left wheel shown here actually gets power to it. I was careful though to inspect the inside of the wheel, as the plastic gear teeth shows wear, but really doesn't look that bad to me. Of course, it was not my intention to have the wheel axle blocking the removal of the drive gear's C-clip, but it came off easily, and that then allowed me to remove the drive gear from the drive shaft. I took off the left side first since it works, and even though the pawl seems a little sticky, it gives me an idea of how it operates. Moving over to the right rear wheel, I made sure that after I removed it, that I gave you a good view of me removing the C-clip from the drive shaft that holds on, of course, that drive gear. On the back of the drive gear are points that the pawl locks up against to give power to the wheel. As you can see, there is no pawl in the assembly, therefore the wheel has no power.
The Pawl is missing.
After doing a little research and looking at a parts list and schematic online, I was able to get the pawl and found out also it uses a torsion spring. Part of the assembly that the pawl sits in has definite grooves, while the other side is a flat plate. As I inspected the flat plate, or what I call the flat plate, I noticed a slot, and by looking at the side that still gets power, I was able to determine how the pawl is positioned in the assembly. I was careful to check the function as well. Now I just have to figure out the position of the missing spring. I decided to do a dry run as I figured out the function of the spring is to hold the pawl down. One side of the spring fits in the slot that is in the part with the grooves that the pawl sits in. The other side of the spring goes over the pawl and holds it down. And that is how the spring is positioned. Next, I placed the metal plate with the slot over the pawl pin. And that's the completed assembly with pawl and spring, but I will clean the parts before I install them onto the lawnmower. I like to use brake cleaner to clean parts, and once they have a chance to soak a few minutes, I will scrub them with a wire brush and shop towel. Now that the parts are clean and dry, I applied a small amount of multi-purpose grease to the pawl. Then I reassembled everything as I demonstrated before. I was about to install the assembly, but I saw this dirty washer, so I went ahead and cleaned that as well, and I applied a small amount of multi-purpose grease to it and then reinstalled it. And while I was at it, I cleaned the drive shaft. Being sure to line up the assembly with the groove on the drive shaft, I installed it. I also cleaned up the drive gear and applied some multi-purpose grease where it contacts the drive shaft. And then I simply placed it on the drive shaft. I also cleaned up the C-clip and reinstalled that. Finally, I installed the wheel and nut on both sides. Again, I used a 14mm socket and my ratchet wrench. That wraps it up for this video. The Pawl works great. I learned a lot. And thank you all for watching. Hopefully you learned something as well. Please be sure to like and subscribe as I have a lot more content on its way. Take care now.